Here we go. So this is the Get Gel Coat Train channel coming to you with a live broadcast to give you my take and my experience with the Starke Yacht Care 2-day training class. And I'll start off by saying this. I took the class with almost 10 years experience. That being said, when I first started detailing, it was basically YouTube for university and just a lot of trial and error. I think most of the detailers' experience came from just pure confidence. You had to, because you didn't know what products to really use or what process to really take. There wasn't a structure. There wasn't a template to follow. You basically just tried to create a gloss the best way you could. And so, like, when I first started out, I just thought that making a boat shine took 2 pads and 2 process. So, I started out doing this a lot when I first started in the business. I was just taking compounds like a McGuire's diamond cut, heavy cut, quote unquote compounds, and I would use that to polish the boat. And then my second step would be just with the yellow wool pad to put a sealant on and use that as the polish stage. I didn't know there was steps, levels, different polishes, pads, procedures to step this gloss game up on the boat. And so I basically started out in 2016 in the summer, pulled some used boats off the line, started teaching myself how to do it, got just enough experience that I could take myself back to Fort Lauderdale, which I was in Orlando, had some family there. Once all that was resolved, went back to Fort Lauderdale and took my tiny little bit of experience and promoted it to a company with a lot more confidence than I should have probably. But it worked. So I spent the next year and a half in that yard, perfecting my process and getting to the point where I felt comfortable. But the interesting part to this whole thing was sourcing these materials, compounds, pads, adapters for the pads, wax, like all these things. It wasn't like you just went down to one store and you could get it. Sometimes it would take getting through 1 to multiple distributors to get what you needed. And then it would turn up 2 weeks later and you find out it's not exactly what you wanted. So that being said, kind of struggled through that experience through 2016, came out here in 17, 18. I decided to take off on my own. And so from 18 and 19, I did a lot of freelance work, started to try to start my business, and basically just kind of did a lot of polishing work, but I wasn't trying to perfect my process. In 2020, I got the opportunity to work in an environment where I was fully funded and sourced. Everything I wanted, needed, and access to it all was just at my will. And I got to really hone in and perfect my sanding process. And so I got very, very good at sanding and polishing, and I did all this by rotary. Now, when I started researching how to detail boats, the crazy thing about it was, like, most of the videos that I seen were just people using rotaries. So when I see detailers that started out polishing boats and they'd never even used a rotary, I find that interesting, because when I started, I only knew rotary. And up until 2023, I'm going to say late, like fall of 2023, I wouldn't even acknowledge a dual action polisher because I was polishing out all of my projects with my rotary with foam and a series of pads and polishes. The best explanation I can give for that process that I was using and what is better is it was the equivalent of, there's an old saying, going around your elbow to get to your asshole. So, yes, the polishing process could have been completed through just using the rotary through polishes and pads. But I started to experience dual action polishers when I started working with somebody that was Starke Yacht Care certified. And that kind of comes from, I'm going to tell you the origin story. So one of the marine detail supply locations opened up here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was super excited. I've heard a lot about these places, but I didn't have one here locally. So when they opened up one right here in Fort Lauderdale, I couldn't wait to check it out. Well, it turned out that place was looking for somebody to work as the in-house salesperson and do detail work on the side on location. I was looking to take that job. I just was moving on from a different job and I was thinking about taking on that position, things didn't work out quite the way they, not necessarily how they should, but didn't work out quite like it could have. And so the shop owner, Jack, very nice guy, put me in contact with one of their certified installers. So I got to go out in the field and work with people and experience the dual action polisher, the Stark products, the procedures. I got to watch in real time somebody put ceramic on the boat. But that being said, I still didn't really understand exactly what I was looking at. So I spent the next few months working with this company, and they were using all the Stark products. So I got to use like a Roops DA polisher with the money pad. And what got me hooked into the Stark Yacht Care brand was they just released this new compound, mid-grade compound, that was called Finish R. I had been hearing a lot of hype about this new polish that was coming out called Blaze, and I hadn't even known that there was some other polish coming out. So when I got it put in my hand, I couldn't wait to use it, and I was just instantly shocked and impressed. I couldn't believe just how well it worked. So from there on out, I've been on social media for years, and I would get up on my social media page, and I was like, this Stark Yacht Care brand, Finish R, is going to change the business, to paraphrase. So I spent some time working underneath somebody that was certified and watching the process. And after using that DA for a few months, I realized what I was missing out on. And so it's a really, kind of silly thing to do, is to never want to step outside your comfort zone, never want to try something different. So the universe forced me into the situation where I got to experience these DAs, and now that I know how they work, unbelievable. With that being said, knowing I had thought I had a pretty good understanding of the polishes that they use, the procedures you should go through when you're using them, to the degree that I couldn't wait to see like what they were going to say in the class, because I kind of felt like I knew. But say that to say this: once I attended the class and they were day one, this is what we're breaking down is the chemical process, like what compounds, what pads, breaking out what they are, that they're non-carcinogenic and they're safe for you, which is something that, kind of detailers have always kind of like turned a blind eye to. It's like, oh, it's just compound. And then, be really upset about, or make sure they're wearing PPE for sanding, but never, dismiss the compound dust, which is fairly dangerous stuff all in all in most compounds. That's another reason why I started to love the Stark Yacht Care brand. I started to realize that the compounds were not only formulated for detailers, by detailers, but they were actually trying to make them as safe and environmentally friendly as possible. Not many other compound companies, will say, have ever tried to get that in depth with their customer base, much less an environmental level. So it made me start paying attention. So I myself try to offer gel coat training classes. So I've been following their business model of bringing people in and trying to train them on their product. And I kind of believe that what I was going to experience when I got there was basically, a breakdown of their polishes, and it was going to be like a sales spiel, like, yeah, this is what we got, and this is why, I kind of figured it was going to, because I've been to these sorts of things before where it was very much like that. You get in there and it's a pep rally for the product, but there's no real explanation for it. I got to say that they went super in depth. Like, I don't want to give away too much. I'll put it like this. I kind of want to ruin the movie. If you've ever had this experience where you really, really wanted to watch a movie that just came out, and then somebody watched it and came by and was like, hey, you wouldn't believe what I seen in that movie, and now they kind of ruined it for you. I'm trying to hold back on what I tell you, because I don't want to ruin this for you. It's such a cool experience. But there's some things that I think you should know. So they're breaking down all the polishes, and I'm just getting more and more impressed with how much they cared about the operators, how it operates for us in real time, that they're willing to take products and re-engineer them to make them better in real time as detailers are giving feedback. That's an important thing. Not many products altogether do that, much less in the detailing business. So, it's interesting. It's like my biggest takeaway from day one in that experience was just how much product knowledge I walked away with, and not just like you explained what this elevate or this level R stuff is, but how the abrasives work, what abrasives are in it, like in-depth explanation into the bio or whatever the chemistry of it. That gives you more ammunition when you're trying to explain to a customer and they're just like, why do you use this? Why do I need that step? Why do I need you to do a heavy cut step? Well, you start talking about everything that you learned in the class and it makes you sound like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. Versus like before you go to the class and someone asks you, because it's important, we have to do a heavy cut. And they're just like, okay. Being able to explain why, I think, is going to be more impulsive than what you've ever experienced before. So that being said about the day one, the biggest takeaways were just like how impressively they laid out the process for the compounds. So getting into day two, this was the part that I came for, was learning how to do the ceramics. Like I felt like I know how to polish, and I thought I knew what compounds to use, but now I know exactly what the formula is, because there is a formula that you'll want to use. Another thing is I've seen people, like I've watched a bunch of videos, but I'm a learn in real time and while I'm watching kind of person. And so that being said, I wanted to see ceramic being applicated and removed in real time. Even with the guy that I worked with, they did it, but they did it in these stages, and I wasn't there all the time, and so I got little bits and pieces, and I never really got to get the full experience. That being said, once I've seen how, I'm not gonna say simple, but how uncomplicated the process really is, once they explained it to me, that was great. The best part about that was the fact that like they explained how they do this. Hold on a second. Excuse me, I thought I had someone at the door. So getting back into day two, ceramics. Ceramics is exactly why I was there. I was more excited than anything about that process. Without giving away too much about the movie, quote unquote, to go back to what I was referring to before, I walked away being completely confident and very sure of my process moving forward from there. Being able to actually take all the machines that they had available and use them in real time and be able to kind of experiment and see, like, do I like this one better? I'll tell you this. So they're going to explain to you what machines you're going to use and why you use them, right? So there's dual action, and there's forced rotation, and there's rotary, and you're going to be explained when, why, and how you should put those together. And so seeing somebody use these machines in real time and then explain why you're using them in those scenarios is something that I think that, a lot of us are out there just guessing. Like, we buy these machines, and one of the guys in the class even admitted, he's like, hey, I bought one of these machines because I didn't think I needed the other one. And they explained why you needed to have a combination of machines. So I kind of believe that anybody, whether you're 2 years experienced or you're 15 years experienced, you would leave this class feeling like you definitely learned a lot more than you knew before you walked in. And I can say that from a point of view of, I've been to training courses before, right? Like, I went to a training out in California, factory for wake boats. It was a week-long course, but 3 days of it was lamination, flake applications, taking a tour through the factory to see how these guys do, make it in the mold, and how it comes out in the mold, and it goes to a different department, and those guys fix the mold guys' problems. And it was very interesting to see how the process works from the ground up. It gives you better appreciation for what you're doing post lamination, post production, right? So like, just speak real quick on gel coat. It's supposed to be made in a mold. So doing it outside of a mold and then making it look like it was freshly out of the mold is an art in itself. That being said, the training course, I gotta say, like, another thing about technique, right? So a lot of people, I remember I tried to work this out when I first started. How do I know, like, how to use the machine? A lot of people are not comfortable with rotary. They're scared of it because they think they're going to burn through while they're polishing. And they were actually demonstrating this in the class when they took, a part that was, kind of, I would say, quote unquote, a junk part, and just sat there and held it down with great force for an extended amount of time to show you just how long it takes before it could happen. And it still didn't burn the panel. So they're basically trying to illustrate that you can put a type of pressure in your pad process. Again, without giving away too much, the trade craft is in the process. So they'll be explaining to you in depth all the geometry and the mechanics and the sweat equity going into making that polishing process perfect. Effectively, what I would like to say is they create high gloss heroes. People that are going to come out of there with either a level of experience that is better or with no experience and a level of experience that other guys took years to achieve in just 2 days. All that being said, here is the two things that I had really no idea this was part of the class. And these are my two favorite takeaways from this training seminar. So at the end of it, on the day 2, they're going to break down pricing, right? So the pricing that you will be charging your customers is something that is probably one of the most asked questions across these detail forums on a day-to-day basis. How much do I charge to polish this boat? And the fact of the matter is, you can get 1,000,001 different answers, and they're all going to seem pretty legit. Through the training program, they're going to explain a pricing structure and why it works that way. It's brilliant. It's going to be industry leading. What they're going to do is they're going to start creating a network of detailers that work together like a unit, and it'll become something like a union where, like, you won't be able to work around getting work without being one of their certified network guys. Because the way I see it evolving over the next 5 to 10 years, over the next 20 years, they'll become the industry standard. Captains, boat owners are going to start reaching out and saying, are you certified? And they may kind of half-ass know what they're talking about. And the ones that know what they're talking about are going to ask you straight up, are you Stark certified? And if your answer is no, I would argue in the next 5 years, you would probably have to struggle to get that job or take it for a lot less money than a certified guy would get. There is more in depth into that. Like, I'm going to say this before I say that. The second part, what they're going to do is they're going to give you business strategies. They're not just going to teach you how to polish the boat and how to be a polishing pro. Essentially, they're going to teach you how to build the business, how to market it, how to build packages, how to get your brand out there. That was the biggest takeaway for me, was like, I didn't see that coming. They're going to tell you things in this class that you had never even thought about in respect to trying to build your company. So you're sitting here thinking right now, I've been doing this for 10 years and I got a successful business. I don't understand why I need this class. I would argue if you're making, just say, $250,000 a year and you're thinking you don't need the class, invest $1,000 to prove yourself wrong. And if you came out the other side and you thought that was a waste of time, I'd be highly surprised. That being said, if you're somebody that's making $100,000 a year or less as a detailer and you're thinking, I can't afford to take that class, you can't afford to miss the class, because the last thing you're going to teach you is how to actually put all this to work. because it really doesn't matter if you're really good at detailing if you can't get any work. So they're going to teach you how to do that. There is a juicy part of that you will discover once you're trained and taught and promoted through the company. When they close you out, they're going to explain to you exactly how all that works. That's the part of the movie I want to leave out. You're going to have to experience that for yourself. I'm going to leave you with this. Came into this very optimistic and with trying to be as humble as possible, knowing that I came in with experience. But I can say I left thinking I should have done this a long time ago. This is one of these 1,000,001 times that I come to terms with it. Well, here's something I didn't think I needed, and now I wish I would have just done it sooner. So don't make the mistake I did. Try to get on the schedule for the next class. They don't have very many openings, and there's not many dates available for these. So if you're brand new to the business, if you've got a small business that needs people in it to detail, if you're a business that wants to try to build your brand with the backing of a bunch of knowledge about the brands of compounds and whatnot you're using, I highly suggest taking the course. Speaking of courses, this summer I'm going to be launching some dates about doing a 2 to 4 day class. The 2 and 4 day class are going to be in the combination together, but this is how it's going to work out. We're going to set up where there's going to be X amount of students that come into the class, and there's going to be X amount of people that are spectators. I understand not everybody wants to attend to be hands-on. Some people just want to come for the experience. So we're going to have openings for people that just be standby, just to be, to watch the process. And then we're going to have operators that are actually doing the hands-on in real-time repairs. So stay tuned for the details. I'm going to release that this summer. Get excited. Get Jelco trained.